Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Coffee with Kevin. First, got to talk about the coffee. Got some fresh coffee here. Nice roast, nice dark roast here. Take a sip of this, and we'll get some energy going. I love my coffee. So this episode in season two here, we're going to talk about another aha moment. So if you remember my last video, talked about an aha moment that one of our clients had around BCM and in particular the BIA. This is another aha moment that's around the BIA in ServiceNow's BCM, and I want to highlight it and explain a topic that is a little might be a little difficult to grasp, but once you get it, it makes a lot of sense. And it's around the disruption duration. This is what's going to determine your RTO of something. So in BCM, business continuity management, one of the big applications is your business impact analysis, and that's one of your business processes that you do as part of your BC and DR program is to go through, do your BIA, determine the criticality of an application, a business process, what the RTO is of if you have a disruption, how quickly do you need to have it back based on what kind of level of impact over time. And that's going to be a key concept is impact over time. So I'll keep revisiting that as we go through this. I am going to show this in the system. So it's not just going to be me talking to you. You'll actually see the system. But it's around the disruption duration in doing the BIA and doing the analysis and going through that whole analysis and understanding where the RTO comes from and how it's derived inside BCM, inside ServiceNow. So without further ado, I'll jump in here. I'll actually bring my system up. So I'm not going to just be a talking head on this one. We're actually going to see the system. So I'm going to take another sip of my coffee and then we'll get into this. Okay, so what am I talking about with disruption duration as it relates to BIA? Here I am in ServiceNow. I'm in the business continuity management application, and I'm in the BIA sub application for that. And I actually have my BIA for my inbound payment process open. So this is I'm looking at the business process impact assessment, right? I'm assessing the business process of inbound payment process. So the disruption duration comes into play when I'm talking about my impacts. Okay. And I can have various kinds of impacts during a disruption, right? It might there might be a legal impact, there might be a revenue impact, there might be an impact of my workforce. So I can have various impacts during a disruption. And what we're talking about with disruption duration comes into play with these impact categories. If I expand one of these impact categories, if I have a disruption in inbound payment process, I probably have an impact in revenue. So that's an obvious one, so I'm going to start with that one. Here's where you see that disruption duration. Now, there can be some confusion around this because some people think that it's about when you say, okay, what's the impact, right? They're asking, well, if I have a disruption, I have a big impact, right? I have a moderate impact. There's a critical impact to the organization if I have an outage. But it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. So really have to think about the time component. So it's not just a disruption or an impact of minor, moderate, or severe. If you have a disruption, that impact grows over time. So what's really start to think about what's the first point that you start to have an impact, right? That it has an impact to the organization, it has a minor impact to the organization, and start thinking about how long of a disruption has to occur before you start having that kind of impact. Now you have to quantify those impact levels, right? What is a low impact, right? What's a medium impact or a high impact? You have to quantify that. But it's really the disruption duration is really about over time, as this disruption is still occurring, what kind of impact are you having? Okay. And at what point does that impact happen over that timeline? So for instance, I have some impact ratings defined here of low, moderate, and high. Okay, I gave a description of what each one of those means, right? So what does a low impact mean? A disruption results in limited revenue loss of $100,000 or less. At what point during my disruption do I hit this kind of impact? And that's going to be my disruption duration. Disruption duration is the time frame that I hit here. So this comes from my recovery time frames. All of these disruption durations are going to play into determining the RTO for this payment process. If I look at what's available to me in this disruption duration, you'll see that it's blocks of time, okay? 1 hour, 4 hours, 8 hours, 24 hours. What this is telling me is that I can choose one of these and say, okay, I have a low impact, meaning my disruption is less of $1,000, pretty much all the way up until 4 hours, right? So at 4 hours, I'm going to start having that low impact. At what point do I start having disruption that of $100,000 to $1 million? If I'm disrupted for 24 hours, that starts to affect me at that level. If I have a high, when do I reach having impact of $1 million or more? Maybe that's the 72-hour mark. So this is really, at what point does it start at? Okay, so at 4 hours, I'm going to start having this kind of impact. At 24 hours, I'm going to start having this kind of impact. And at 72 hours, I'm going to start having this kind of impact. And the reason I'm using that starts at is because if I look in the system how these are defined, here are my recovery timeframes that I was just choosing from. Here's my 4 hour one. You'll see that the main component of this is a starts at. So this starts at 4 hours. So up until 4 hours, I'm essentially saying here that I don't really have an impact. Okay. Sometimes clients want to put in a no impact here and have that. It creates a little bit of confusion though. So if you just keep it to low, moderate, high, maybe you have a critical or catastrophic even, you can have that. But this gets your users thinking and the process owners thinking about, okay, when do I have that low impact? So if I have a disruption what I'm saying here is if I have a disruption that's an hour, I don't have, really any kind of impact. I start to have an impact of a low impact at 4 hours. I start to have this at 24 and so on. So this is really looking at this over time. Now, it may be a new concept to think about it over time, right? Because the easier way to go is if you have a disruption, yeah, it's a major impact. I can't believe, if this thing goes down, we have a major impact in the organization. Well, what do you mean by a major impact? And really starting to quantify that gives you these questions, and you can kind of lead the user through these questions and really gets them to think about the impact over time. And that goes back to my statement earlier. So just disruption duration, you're thinking about when are you hitting these different impact levels? How long does it take before you hit these impact levels? Then when I go through this and look at this and say, okay, I now have this. Let's actually, I'm going to edit this just so you can see how you can edit this. And I come back and I say, actually, this should be 8 hours. Actually, this is 4 hours here. I actually have a really tight, if this is down for an hour, since I'm processing so many inbound payments, I could lose that much. And I'm going to drop this down to 8 hours. Okay, so I'm going to change that. Now I'm going to go ahead and complete that. As I go through and complete these for all of these different impacts, it's going to play into my RTO. So now you can see that I have an RTO because I've only filled out one of the impacts with all the disruption durations. But you can see that my RTO right now is 8 hours. That'll keep getting calculated as I complete more of these, but that's going to feed right to that 8 hours. 8 hours is also mapped to a recovery tier of business critical. So this will help me define all of my business critical business processes. In this case, it could be business applications, but this does it in an objective way, right? Not just a statement of, yeah, that's catastrophic if we have a disruption with that, right? Well, it may be catastrophic after 3 days, but immediately it's not, right? And so that this helps determine that RTO by using these disruption durations. So again, disruption duration is looking at this disruption over time. And over time, when do you start hitting these different impact ratings? As defined by what you have in the description here, right? You have to quantify these, understanding what a moderate is. Okay, each one of these can have their own definition. So regulatory, I'm going to have different definitions for what a moderate regulatory impact is this. So I can define all of this. This is all configurable inside the system, so it matches your organization. But this is really how that disruption duration plays into this. So again, depending on where you're coming from, you may have ideas around, well, I have a range for my RTO. This one's a critical application for us, or it's a platinum level application for us, and that means it needs to come up in 4 to 8 hours, right? Or this one, if this goes down, there's a moderate impact to the organization. Okay, what's moderate mean there? And take all that what you're doing currently and translate it into this. A lot of that can be translated in. You may have to build out a little bit more. You may also want to, maybe start out a little simpler where you only have one. I only really care about when that's a high impact to the organization. Okay, and that's what I'm going to have drive my RTO. So now your users are really only answering one question per category. The 3 here really helps you start to think about, okay, over time, I'm going to have impact, and I need to start picturing it this way. So hopefully that clears up a little bit on the disruption duration. I think that the aha moment for that we came across was more understanding that it's impact over time. So that's why I can't just say, well, there's a moderate impact to regulatory. Yes, there's a moderate impact, but when? Right? When does that hit that moderate impact? And that's your disruption duration. And thinking of it that way and thinking of when and over that course of the timeline helps you understand why there's a disruption duration selection here and why you're actually answering these questions or giving the disruption duration for these different impact ratings. So hopefully seeing it in the system cleared it up a little bit. Please comment, if you want clarity, if you want a demo, anything, you want to dispute what I said, feel free. That's what this is all about, just to get the discussion going. But hopefully, that was definitely a turning point for a couple of our clients when they started to understand that. And then the end users, being able to explain that to the end users, they really understood that. And they really started to look at their processes and their applications in a different way, because they looked at it not just of the application becoming unavailable or the process becoming unavailable. They looked at it, okay, over time, what kind of impact does this have to the organization? If I can get it up quick enough, it doesn't have any impact to the organization, right? And if it's, maybe minimal impact to the organization, so they can really understand over time. And it really helps them quantify the importance of their business process or their application. So again, thanks for watching. I appreciate it as always. And feel free to comment below, reach out to me, connect with me. I love doing these, and you'll see some more episodes coming. And I think we're going to start doing share some interviews with some people. So, and we're going to have some fun with that. So, look forward to the next one. And thanks again. And as always, stay caffeinated out there.